of them days. Just to keep things moving, I'm going to focus on building the transmission crossmember. I'll take you guys along on the process. And yeah, so I hope you guys learned something. If I'm doing it wrong, which I might be, yeah, maybe you'll still learn. You'll learn what not to do. What I'm going to do is I'm going to use what I have to mount this transmission. I'm going to cut the middle out and make it removable. So I'll probably add like a tab on either side, weld it, cut it, build tabs, and then drill through and do a bolt on either side. What I want to do is, like I said, just basically use what I have here and make a mount. This is a 3/16 wall. Looks like 1.5 inches by 1.5 inches box tube. I'm going to use this because I have it. If you look at the location of where the transmission mount is, which is here, you really can't, oh yeah you can see that right there was where the mount was tack welded or welded onto the frame rail, and it's just behind that mount. I could have just welded it and then put a plate underneath, but I want to be able to make this removable. That bit me in the butt on the last car that I built, on the 30, because I switched it from an automatic to a standard, and I did not make the transmission crossmember removable at first, and then I had an issue with my hydraulic clutch, and I realized I was going to have to pull the whole motor and transmission if I didn't make the transmission crossmember removable. So I ended up modifying it, making it removable. So I'm going to do that now before I get to a point where the transmission's in and installed. And a guy gave me this. When he gave it to me, he was an old timer. He grabbed it off a shelf and said, "Here's a battery terminal." Took that and threw it in the box that he gave me, like a milk crate or something. It's actually a transmission mount, which I knew it at the time, but it was really good to me. Anyways, I knew what it was. I kept it, obviously, and I'm going to use this for the transmission mount. The transmission, like I said, is a late 60s Mustang. This mount is a little different. The tabs that are on it don't fit the mount on the transmission. It actually has to be wider. It's 6.5 inches or 6.25 inches center to center on the bolt holes. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to leave these mounts the way they are. I'm just going to add some material to this, extend it, and drill my holes. And then I'll get this mounted to the transmission, and I'm going to start fabricating the actual transmission crossmember. Figure out this measurement is 5 1/4. So at 5 1/4, it is 2 5/8. Is my center mark correct? Right? So 2 1/2 is 5, and then 1/8. Yeah. So this is my center. So now I need to figure out the difference between what I have and what I need. 1 inch and 1/8 on each end is what I need to add. So I need 1 inch and 1/8 piece of material. This is 3/16 plate. So it's 1 3/4 inches. So I'm going to cut a 3-inch piece and then cut it in half. Those are the pieces I need for that. Alright guys, so I got my little tabs cut out. Whoop. gonna turn the gas on. So as you can see, it kind of curls up a little bit when you weld it like that because of the heat, as most of you know. The mount for this transmission on eBay was $20. And I had this mount. It worked just as good, so I'm gonna save myself 20 bucks and just use something I already had. Couple of real quick welds. Again, this mount is sandwiched between the transmission and the transmission mount. So it really, at the end of the day, isn't, there's pressure on it, but it's not just hanging out there, you know? It's kind of sandwiched in, so it really can't go anywhere. That's why they're not made with super heavy material. So that's exactly what I need. I need to drill a hole in each new piece that I just added on. Once that's done, I can mount it to the bottom of the transmission, and then I can build the cradle that I'm going to need. That is essentially going to replace this area here. This flat section here, I'm going to remove it. I'm going to use this 1/4 inch material. It's going to go down. It's going to go across the bottom and then up. So this whole area in between here will be open. There'll be nothing here. It'll come down. It'll drop down to the cradle where the transmission is going to sit, and then it'll go that way. Now, this needs to go like that. So what I need to do is figure out my center mark, my center on this. It is 33.5, so that puts me at 16 3/4. What I need to do is make sure that when I build this removable piece, it has to be at least the width of the base of the transmission mount, because it has to pass through it. So I went 4.5 inches off the center. So I'm in the shop this morning. I left off yesterday working on this transmission mount. These are the tabs that I added on here. I still have to drill these out. So I have my metal piece that I use to use as a template. This is the stock that was on the car. I'm going to reuse this. It's going to end up kind of being something like this. This is going to be on the transmission. The actual cradle will be down here and below, and then go back up. I'm gonna clean up this metal, start working on this transmission mount, get this set where it needs to be in the car, and then figure out exactly how it is I'm gonna make my cradle. I'm gonna get holes drilled in these plates here, on these mounts, the tabs that I added, and then get this bolted to the transmission, and then just, like I said, kind of let it evolve into what it's going to become. So I'm going to get to work on this now. figure out, yeah, I sanded too far forwards on this side. So what I need to do is figure out where my mount's gonna go. So basically I'm gonna try to put it as low as I can. Right where the transmission is now is the angle I need it to be. This angle of the transmission is at the angle where the carburetors are level. So basically what I need to do is clean up a little more on the side of the frame. I'm going to tack this one piece in on this side, do the same on the passenger side, and then I can start fabricating my cradle. So, I think the driver's side's gonna go, I'm gonna bump the driver's side forwards a little bit. These are gonna be stationary on the car, so the cradle is gonna be what's removable. Okay, so I've got both sides of my transmission crossmember just tacked to either side of the frame. These are going to be permanent affixed to the frame rails. You can see in the middle, I have enough space on either side that I'll have room to drop the transmission down underneath the car. All right, so what I'm working on now is I'm just going to get this centered, which this is my center obviously here. This was my center that I marked last night. So we're gonna get these holes drilled and then get this mounted underneath the transmission. Like I said, I don't know if these drill bits are good until I use them. I try to keep them separated, but sometimes they just get moved around. Sharp drill bit streak, keep it going. Just use this. I might be jumping up a little too much with this one. Nope. That's got, oh, it's loose. Let's see, that's got a pretty good wobble to it. Whoop. Got hung up a little bit there. All right. I just gotta find one more, and I think we'll be opened up to what we need. I'm gonna take my grinder real quick and round off these edges a little just to pretty it up. So you can see the bolt fits, got a little bit of wiggle room so I can move things around a little in case it's not dead on, but I think it should be pretty close. So let's go get it bolted to the bottom side of the transmission. Hopefully it fits. All right, so I got that mounted. Next thing to do is to build the plate that goes on the bottom, and then I'll attach it to the side pieces. But I'm happy with how it's coming out so far. Just figure things as you go. Just like anything else. So what I'm doing is just taking an old car show flyer. A buddy of mine gave me a stack of them. He uses them for templates. And now I'm doing the same. So what I'm doing is I'm just kind of bending up a template to get an idea on measurements for the cradle that's going to go up underneath the transmission. And like I had said before, it's going to mount to this. I'm going to build tabs that come off the side that I'll through bolt through these 1.5 inch pieces of square tube. That's more or less the idea. About 2 inches wide. I mean, I want it to be nice, but I want it to function also. It doesn't have to be a piece of art. I don't think this is long enough. Just barely. Be nice to just use this and not have to cut down this piece of 3/16 plate. Just less cutting, less mess. This is gonna go there like that. And I'm gonna have my pieces of plate come off like this. And then it'll bolt through. And then this whole piece will be able to drop out with the transmission. It's good practice to make things so they're removable. Because as soon as you run across a situation with your car and you have to remove something that's welded in, that's when you realize it. All right, I can see what I have for material. I could use the 1/4 inch stock across the bottom and then weld. Yep, I think that's what I'm gonna do here. If I were to take this and measure, get my center measurement, which is 8.5, 4 1/4. And then measure out 3/4 of an inch, 3/4 of an inch. Should put it there. It is 1.5 inches, correct? Sitting down last night trying to figure out how I'm gonna do this. I should have probably just jumped online and looked into transmission Crossmembers, but I didn't. Just gonna do a quick copy of this. I'm gonna fold it at my line, and as long as I keep the factory edge even, I know it should be a square 90 degrees. And do the same over here. Bend it at my line. And it's one thing to do it with paper, it's another to do it with steel, I know. There we go. So that essentially is what my transmission crossmember removable like cradle is going to look like. This portion here will be across the bottom, and then these wings will mount onto the pieces coming down from the frame rails. So let's go give it a quick test fit and see how it's going to be. See how it'll work out. I mean, I know it's just paper and it's a little difficult to get it exact, but you can get a pretty good idea of what you need to do and how you need to fabricate things, even just by doing this. I don't want that to be bent. I don't want the paper to be bent. I want it to be kind of straight as I can get it. Well, if anything, it's a little too long. Oh no, it's not. I just rolled it. Yeah. Well, I think that is how I'm gonna build my cradle for my transmission. Beautiful. I think that's gonna work out slick. So hopefully you can see now what I'm attempting to do. So these are the wings that are going to be removable on the side of the chassis, on the side of the crossmember pieces coming down. Get to work on getting this metal, all the templates drawn out on the metal, and get some of this metal stock cut that I need. cut and bent and ready to go, and then get things welded up. So let's do that. Let's see if this one's square. Yeah, this one fits good. That one's not square, so I'm gonna go re-square that one in a minute. But for the time being, I want to get this one clamped on here so I can figure out exactly where I need to be. That's exactly what I didn't want to happen. Fitting right. I'll go straighten it out. So I'm going to add a few more tacks to this so I can pull it apart safely and know that it's not gonna fall to pieces. Kinda at a funny angle here. So, I think I'm good. Get that all tacked together. I'm gonna swap out my flap disc for a cutoff wheel, cut these tacks at the edges of the frame rails, and then pull this cross member out. Can't really get my cutoff wheel in there. Okay. So at the end of that painstaking process, this is what the transmission cross member looks like. Now, I had said before, I don't want to just rely on the welds at these connections here. So what I want to do is I think I'm going to add a couple of small pieces of steel on either side and just get some extra support. I don't really need any support here, I don't think, but I don't really know as if I'm going to need any additional support here. I mean, I could certainly add some. I don't want moisture and things to get trapped in here, water and road debris to get trapped inside here, so I don't really want to fill this in because this isn't going to go all the way up. It's going to stay right where it's at. Same as over here. These are the areas where I'm going to make my marks, drill a couple holes on either side. I am going to make sure these angles here are square. If the transmission mount, like I had said before, is in. This transmission's bolted. It's bolted through. I still have some tack welds I got to cut off. You can see it's only a single bar connected to the frame rail on either side. I'm going to add to that, but I'm not going to do it quite yet. The reason being is moving forwards here, this is going to be my pedal assembly, and I don't want to just start adding material here and then have to only remove it once I figure out my pedal assembly. My shifter linkage here, clutch linkage down here. So I'm not too concerned. I worked on the 30 Coupe and it was extremely confined space. So this is actually quite a bit more than what I had to work with the 30, and I did okay. That car functions well. So I'm confident I can figure it out, but I don't want to get too far ahead of myself. So if anyone sees this Crossmember and says, hey, that's not enough, you need to add more, I am going to in the future before the floor goes in, but I just need to get this situated so I know I have room for everything else, and then kind of work off of this as my base. You know, I'll probably do, it's going to be tough for me to do any type of an X brace because it's a heavy channel car and I want to get the floors down. In order to get the floors down, I can't exactly build an X brace. So, you know, and I can't build underneath the drive shaft because then I won't be able to get my transmission out or my drive shaft out. I don't want to have to pull my drive shaft out, you know, from the top of the car. So it's just, I'm limited on what I have to do, and I just need to do one step at a time and just make sure I'm careful with how things evolve and make sure that I don't want to paint myself into a corner, so to speak. So I need to just take my time, think things through. So transmission Crossmember is in. Everything's bolted. It's removable. The center section is removable. So again, I am going to add some other additional braces to that, whether it ends up being like a K member, like a reverse K member or something like that. Kind of have a feeling that's probably what it's going to end up like. But again, I don't want to shoot myself in the foot because I need space to run my pedals. I need space for my master cylinder. I need space for my exhaust. So I don't want to get too far ahead of myself and then end up having to cut things back apart and just making more work for myself. I'm going to move on from the transmission Crossmember. And I think, like I said, what I'm going to do is I may just start working on my wishbone mounts. I already have them cleaned up. They're all cleaned up, ready to weld. Everything's, the edges are all chamfered and ready to go. At this point now, if I were to run the wishbones at the 7.5, 8 degrees that I want to run, my wishbones would be probably 6 inches beneath my frame, and it's just not going to work. So I need to pie cut them so the tie rod ends are higher and they tuck right up underneath the edges of the cowl, the front edges of the cowl, right to the bottom of the frame rail. This is the critical stuff. It's setting the motor in place, making sure everything's going to work and coincide like it's supposed to. So this is just the real critical stuff. And I just want to make sure that I do it right the first time, because when the time comes, I want to be able to just know that I built the car correctly and not worry about taking it all apart again before and changing stuff, you know, to remock stuff up. Because anyone who's ever built one of these cars before, you know, the second you change one thing, it changes 10 things. So I want to make sure as I go, I'm really taking it slow, going through the process nice and slow, and making sure, just thinking from every single angle I could possibly think, look at it from every direction, and making sure that every single little thing I'm going to do is not going to shoot myself in the foot, or another term, in the future. So appreciate you guys watching. I'll see you guys soon. Take care. Bye-bye.